They say the truth always comes out in the wash, but in my case, it came out on national television at 7 minutes past midnight. My name is Arthur, and for 15 years, I thought I was building a legacy for my family. I thought I was a provider, the protector, the rock. But one cold December evening, my wife looked me in the eye and told me I was a problem. She told me I was too difficult to be around and banned me from our family Christmas trip. I sat alone in an empty house, believing her lies, thinking I was a failure of a husband. I had no idea that while I was eating leftovers in the dark, my face was about to be plastered across every news network in America. Welcome back to Inspiration Seeker. If you believe that karma has a way of finding everyone eventually, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss how this story ends. This is the story of how I lost my family, only to find my dignity. The silence in our dining room was louder than any scream I had ever heard. It was 3 days before Christmas, and the air inside our Manhattan penthouse felt colder than the snow falling outside on Fifth Avenue. I remember staring down at my plate, pushing a piece of roasted asparagus around with my fork, just trying to avoid eye contact with Elena. For months, it felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Every word I said was wrong. Every question I asked was an interrogation. Every breath I took seemed to annoy the woman I had sworn to love for the rest of my life. I looked up, hoping to catch a glimpse of the warmth that used to be in her eyes, but all I saw was a wall of ice. Elena placed her wine glass down on the marble table with a sharp clink that echoed through the room. She cleared her throat, and I knew. My stomach dropped. I knew a lecture was coming, but I wasn't prepared for what she actually said. "Arthur," she started, her voice eerily calm, devoid of any emotion. "I've been thinking about the trip to Aspen, about the cabin." "I can't wait," I said, trying to force a smile. "I really need a break. Work has been—" She cut me off with a raised hand. "That's just it, Arthur. You're not coming." I froze. I actually laughed a little, a nervous, confused chuckle. "What do you mean, I'm not coming? It's Christmas. It's our family tradition. I designed that cabin, Elena. And that is exactly why you need to stay here," she replied, leaning back in her chair, crossing her arms. She looked at me like I was a stranger, or worse, an employee she was about to fire. "You have been impossible lately. You're difficult, Arthur. You're constantly stressed, you're moody, and quite frankly, you bring everyone down. The kids feel it. I feel it. We need a happy Christmas. And we can't have that if you're there shadowing over everything with your negativity." Her words hit me like physical blows. Difficult? I was working 80-hour weeks to pay for the private schools, the cars, the vacations, and the very food on this table. I was stressed because I was carrying the weight of the world to give them a perfect life. But looking at her resolute face, I didn't fight back. I was too tired. I felt a wave of immense guilt wash over me. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had become a monster without realizing it. "So," she continued, taking a sip of wine as if she had just discussed the weather, "it's decided. The kids and I will go to Aspen. You will stay here, focus on your work, or rest, or do whatever it is you do. We need space, Arthur. I need space." I nodded slowly, my heart breaking into a million pieces right there at the dinner table. I didn't know it then, but that space she wanted wasn't for healing. It was for something far more sinister. The next morning arrived with a gray, heavy sky that seemed to press down on the city, matching the crushing weight in my chest. The house was a flurry of activity, but I felt like a ghost haunting my own hallway. I stood near the grand staircase, watching the hired driver load pristine leather suitcases into back of a black SUV idling in our driveway. Every bag that went into that trunk felt like another brick being laid in the wall between me and my family. My daughter, Sophie, was the first to come down. At 16, she usually had her nose buried in her phone, but today she looked up at me with genuine confusion. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, her winter coat buttoned up to her chin. "Dad," she asked, her voice quiet, "are you seriously not coming? It's going to be weird without you. Who's going to make the fireplace actually work?" I opened my mouth to answer, to maybe tell her that I wanted to go more than anything. But Elena swept into the room like a storm front. She was dressed in her white cashmere coat, looking impeccable and utterly detached. "We discussed this, Sophie," Elena cut in, her voice sharp enough to slice glass. "Your father has a lot of thinking to do, and he has work to catch up on. He needs the quiet. Don't make this harder than it already is." Sophie looked from her mother to me, waiting for me to fight for my spot in the car. But I didn't. I just forced a weak smile and pulled her into a hug. "Mom's right, sweetie. I've been a bear lately. You guys go have fun. I'll hold down the fort here." Leo, my 19-year-old son, came down last. He didn't say much. He just gave me a firm handshake and a pat on the back, but I saw the disappointment in his eyes. He knew something was off. Parents fight, sure, but skipping Christmas? That was uncharted territory. "Call us if you get lonely, Dad," he muttered. "I will." I lied. Elena didn't hug me. She didn't even look me in the eye. She just checked her reflection in the foyer mirror, adjusted her scarf, and walked past me toward the door. "There is plenty of food in the freezer," she said over her shoulder. "Try to get some rest, Arthur. You look terrible." And just like that, they were gone. I stood in the open doorway, the biting winter wind hitting my face, watching the taillights of the SUV disappear around the corner. As the engine noise faded, an oppressive silence rushed back into the house. I was the king of my castle, standing in a mansion worth millions, yet I had never felt more pathetic or more alone in my entire life. The first 24 hours of solitude were the hardest. I had given the household staff the week off, a decision I usually made so they could be with their own families. But now, without the hum of the vacuum or the clinking of dishes in the kitchen, the house felt like a mausoleum. It was a massive, modern structure of glass and steel that I had designed myself, intended to be a masterpiece of residential architecture. But sitting there on the plush velvet sofa in the living room, staring at the 12-foot Christmas tree that stood dark and unlit, I realized I had built a cage, not a home. I poured myself a glass of water, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. For 15 years, I had convinced myself that the late nights at the firm and the missed recitals were necessary sacrifices. I told myself that providing this lifestyle, the penthouse, the Aspen cabin, the designer clothes, was my love language. I was the provider. That was my role. But in the quiet of that empty house, the truth began to seep in. I wasn't just a provider. I was a wallet, a resource to be mine until it was time for the fun part of life, at which point I was discarded because I was too difficult. The sun began to set, casting long, lonely shadows across the room. A sudden wave of panic hit me. I needed to hear their voices. I needed to know they had arrived safely in Colorado. I pulled out my phone and dialed Elena first. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Elena. Leave a message." I frowned and dialed Leo. Straight to voicemail. I dialed Sophie. Straight to voicemail. That was odd. My teenagers lived on their phones. Even if they were ignoring me, the phones should have been on. A knot of anxiety began to tighten in my stomach. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the reception in the mountains was bad due to a storm. Maybe they were just so happy to be away from their difficult father that they turned everything off to truly disconnect. I sat there in the darkening room, the phone clutched in my hand, waiting for a call back that never came. I felt a profound sense of alienation, as if I had been surgically removed from my own life. I was surrounded by the expensive things I had bought them, yet I had never felt poorer. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, and it was hiding something. By the second day, the idleness began to feel like a sickness. I couldn't sit still anymore. Since I had insisted the cleaning staff take the holiday off to be with their families, the penthouse was beginning to look a little lived in, but not in a cozy way. I decided to distract myself with manual labor. I deep cleaned the master bedroom, a room I hadn't really spent time in since Elena started sleeping in the guest suite due to my snoring, or so she claimed. I walked into the master suite, and the scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, still lingered in the air, a ghostly reminder of the woman who didn't want me. I stripped the bedsheets and started vacuuming the thick, plush carpet. As I maneuvered the vacuum cleaner under the heavy oak frame of our California king bed, the nozzle hit something hard with a metallic thud. I turned the machine off and knelt down, reaching into darkness beneath the bed. My fingers brushed against cold glass and aluminum. I pulled it out, blowing off a thick layer of dust bunnies. It was Elena's old iPad Pro. She had complained about losing it 3 months ago, and had promptly bought a new one on the company card the very next day. I was about to toss it onto the nightstand to deal with later, but instinct made me press the home button. To my surprise, the screen flickered to life. It had 2% battery left. It must have been left on standby for weeks, slowly draining. I stared at the screen, intending to just power it down, when the Wi-Fi icon suddenly connected to the house network. Ding! A single notification banner slid down from the top of the lock screen. It was an email preview from a private, encrypted address I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my blood run cold. Subject: Flight confirmation and Aspen itinerary preview. Don't worry about him. Your ticket is safe. I'll meet you at the cabin in 5. Can't wait to finally celebrate a real Christmas with you, babe. I stared at the glowing text, my breath hitching in my throat. Babe. I hadn't called her that in years. And I certainly hadn't sent that email. The sender wasn't me. Someone else was meeting my wife in my cabin. The iPad screen flickered once, worn a low battery, and then went black. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt hadn't just been planted. It had instantly bloomed into a terrifying realization. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely plug the charging cable into the port. I sat on the edge of the unmade bed, staring at the black screen of the iPad, willing it to come back to life. Those agonizing 2 minutes while the battery symbol remained red felt like an eternity. My mind was racing, trying to invent innocent explanations. Maybe it was spam, maybe a wrong number. But deep down, the nausea churning in my gut told me exactly what this was. Finally, the white Apple logo appeared. The screen lit up, asking for a passcode. I hesitated. We used to have an open device policy, but that had changed years ago when she started locking her phone. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried the kids' birthdays. Incorrect. I took a deep breath and typed in our wedding anniversary, 0-6-1-5. The lock screen unlocked. The irony was a punch to the gut. She was using the date of our union to hide the evidence of its destruction. I didn't go to the photos. I went straight to the email app where the notification had come from. The inbox was full of threads with a contact saved simply as M. I tapped on the most recent message, the one I had seen the preview for. Don't worry about him. Your ticket is safe. I'll meet you at the cabin in 5. Can't wait to finally celebrate a real Christmas with you, babe. I scrolled up to see the sender's full email address. When I tapped the name, the contact card expanded, and my world stopped spinning. It didn't just stop, it shattered. Marcus Reynolds. I dropped the tablet on the duvet as if it had burned me. Marcus wasn't just some random guy. He was my vice president. He was the man I had hired straight out of college, the man I had mentored for a decade. I had treated him like the younger brother I never had. I trusted him with my company, my legacy, and apparently my wife. I picked the tablet back up, forcing myself to look. It wasn't just one email. There were hundreds. Texts, photos, voice memos. They weren't just flirting. They were mocking me. In one text from a week ago, Marcus wrote, "Did the old man buy the stressed-out excuse? We need him to stay in New York so we can have the run of the place." Elena's reply was underneath it. Hook, line, and sinker. He thinks it's his fault. He's such a pathetic pushover, Marcus. I can't wait to be with a real man. I sat there, paralyzed. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was screaming at me. My wife and my best friend were together in my cabin, laughing at me, while I sat here blaming myself for being difficult. If finding out about the affair was a stab to the heart, what I found next was a bullet to the head. I sat there for what felt like hours, reading their sordid messages, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and nausea. But as I scrolled further back to a shared folder in their chat history titled Project Freedom, the tone of the conversation shifted. It wasn't about love or sex anymore. It was about math. It was about logistics. I opened a PDF document attached to an email sent from Marcus to Elena dated 2 weeks prior. The file name was harmless enough, renovation plans. But when I opened it, it wasn't a blueprint for a kitchen remodel. It was a blueprint for my destruction. It was a complex web of wire transfers and shell companies. I'm an architect, not an accountant, but I've run a multi-million-dollar firm for 20 years. I know what a balance sheet is supposed to look like, and I know what fraud looks like. There were bank statements from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands under an LLC I had never heard of. And then I saw the source of the funds. My breath caught in my throat. They weren't just spending my personal savings. They were draining the employee pension fund. I swiped to the next page and saw scanned documents. Legal transfer papers for the Aspen cabin and our commercial property in Brooklyn. At the bottom of each page was my signature. A perfect digital replica of my signature. Marcus had used his access level to forge my authorization. The plan was laid out in terrifying detail in the accompanying notes. They weren't just going to leave me. They were going to frame me. The plan was to enjoy one last lavish Christmas at the cabin on the company dime, finalize the transfer of the assets to their offshore accounts on December 26th, and then file for divorce in January. By the time the auditors looked at the books, the money would be gone, Elena and Marcus would be victims, and I would be the CEO who embezzled his employees' retirement to fund a luxury lifestyle before his wife left him. They weren't just breaking my heart. They were planning to send me to federal prison. I wasn't looking at a breakup. I was looking at the premeditated murder of my entire existence. The realization hit me like a physical sickness. I stumbled out of the bedroom and made my way down to my study, my legs feeling like lead. My entire life, every late night, every sacrifice, every brick I had laid was being dismantled by the two people I trusted most. The rage bubbling inside me was so intense it felt like it was going to burn a hole through my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to the airport, fly to Aspen, and tear that cabin apart with my bare hands. I reached for the crystal decanter on my desk, my fingers shaking as I poured a generous measure of 18-year-old single malt scotch. I needed to numb this. I needed to turn off images playing in my head. Marcus laughing at my desk, Elena forging my signature, the two of them toasting to my ruin. I raised a glass to my lips, the fumes of the alcohol stinging my nose, ready to drink myself into oblivion. But as I tilted my head back, my eyes locked onto a small black and white photograph framed on the bookshelf. It was my father. He wasn't CEO or an architect. He was a bricklayer from Queens with callous hands and a back that hurt every single day. He had taught me everything I knew about integrity. Arthur, he used to say, a house built on lies will always collapse. But a man who stands on the truth can weather any storm. I stared at his eyes in the photo. He looked disappointed, as if he were watching his son give up. I froze. If I drank the scotch, if I let myself fall apart, they won. They wanted me weak. They wanted me drunk and emotional, so I would fit the narrative of the difficult, unstable husband they were painting me out to be. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered the glass. I didn't take a sip. Instead, I poured the amber liquid into the potted fern next to my desk. The smell of wasted scotch filled the air, but my head was suddenly crystal clear. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp resolve. I wasn't going to get mad. I wasn't going to get even. I was going to get justice. I wiped the single tear that had escaped my eye. The difficult Arthur was gone. The Arthur who built skyscrapers was back, and I was about to design the most intricate trap of my career. I didn't stay in the house. The penthouse felt tainted, filled with the ghosts of marriage that had been dead for years. Instead, I grabbed my coat, the iPad, and my keys, and drove straight into the heart of Manhattan. The city was alive with Christmas Eve energy, tourists gawking at the Rockefeller tree, couples walking hand in hand. But I moved through it like a shadow. My destination wasn't a party. It was the 42nd floor of the Vance Architecture building. The office was eerie in the dark. Usually, this place buzzed with the energy of 50 brilliant architects and designers. But tonight, it was a silent cavern of empty desks and blinking server lights. I walked past Marcus's office, the glass walls gleaming innocently. I resisted the urge to smash his door in. Instead, I went to the server room. I am the CEO, but I'm also the founder. I built this company's infrastructure from the ground up, which meant I had something Marcus forgot about: the God mode admin keys. I bypassed the standard login protocols and went straight into the back end of our financial system. For the next 48 hours, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I ran on black coffee and pure, unadulterated adrenaline. I became a digital archaeologist, digging through layers of encrypted data to find the bones of their crime. Marcus was smart, but he was arrogant. He assumed I would never look at the raw server logs. He left digital fingerprints everywhere. I found the unauthorized transfers disguised as vendor payments. I found the modified metadata on the property deeds. I found a keystroke log showing Elena's login credentials being used from Marcus's IP address. But the smoking gun was the CCTV footage from the archives. I pulled up the video from 3 weeks ago. Marcus and Elena in my office, after hours, laughing as they shredded physical documents. By the time the sun began to rise over the Hudson River on Christmas Eve morning, my eyes were burning and my body ached, but I had it. I had a digital dossier 3 inches thick. It wasn't just proof of an affair. It was irrefutable proof of grand larceny, fraud, and conspiracy. I stared at the folder on my screen, named simply the Christmas gift. They wanted a surprise this holiday. I was about to give them one they would never forget. Christmas Eve in New York City has a specific rhythm, a frantic, joyful chaos of last-minute shoppers and tourists flooding the streets. But inside the private conference room of the Federal Building in Lower Manhattan, the atmosphere was dead silent. I wasn't there to shop. I was there to sell out the people who had betrayed me. I sat across from Special Agent David Miller, a man I had known since our days playing rugby at Yale. David wasn't a friend I called for drinks. He was a friend I called when things went nuclear. He was the head of the white-collar crimes division for the FBI's New York field office. Between us on the steel table sat a single, silver USB drive containing the Christmas gift dossier. David looked up from his laptop, his face pale. He pulled off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Arthur," he said, his voice grave, "do you realize what you've given me here? This isn't just embezzlement. This is wire fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and because they touch the pension funds. It's a federal crime with mandatory minimums. If I act on this, there's no going back. Elena, she's looking at 15 to 20 years. Marcus, too." I looked at David, expecting to feel a pang of hesitation. Elena was a mother of my children. We had shared a life, a home, a history. But then I remembered the text messages. I remembered the plan to leave me bankrupt and frame me for their crimes. I remembered her calling me difficult, while she plotted to steal the retirement savings of the 65 employees who looked up to me. "I know exactly what it is, David," I said, my voice steady. "They didn't just try to rob me. They tried to rob the janitor, who has worked for me for 20 years. They tried to rob the receptionist, who is saving for her wedding. I want them stopped." David nodded slowly, a look of grim respect on his face. "Okay, we have enough here for an immediate warrant. I can have a team at the Aspen cabin within the hour." "No," I interjected, leaning forward. "Not yet. The final transfer, the one that drains a corporate operating account into their shell company, is scheduled to execute automatically at 12:01 a.m. on Christmas Day. If you arrest them now, it's just conspiracy. But if you wait until that money moves..." David's eyes widened, understanding the play. "If we wait until the money moves, it's active grand larceny caught in real time. We catch them with their hands in the cookie jar." "Exactly," I said, cold as ice. "I want you to wait until the clock strikes 12. Let them think they've won. Let them pop the champagne. And then I want you to take everything from them." While I sat in the sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room of the FBI field office in Manhattan, watching the seconds tick by on the wall clock, a very different scene was playing out 2,000 miles away in the Colorado Rockies. I didn't need to be there to know exactly what was happening. I knew Elena, and I knew Marcus. I could picture it with sickening clarity. They were in my cabin, the Glass House, as I affectionately called it, a structure designed to offer panoramic views of the snow-capped mountains. But they weren't looking at the scenery. They were celebrating their victory lap. According to the timeline we reconstructed later, my children, Leo and Sophie, had been ushered off to the guest wing hours ago. Elena had told them that the adults needed grown-up time to discuss business for the upcoming year. My poor kids were likely asleep, oblivious of the fact that their mother was downstairs toasting to the destruction of their father. In the main living area, a fire would be roaring in the stone hearth I had laid myself. Elena and Marcus were likely sitting on the Italian leather sectional, a bottle of Dom Perignon, my vintage reserve, open on the coffee table. They were watching the digital clock on Marcus's laptop, counting down the minutes. They were waiting for midnight, not for Santa Claus, and not to wish each other a Merry Christmas. They were waiting for the automated banking protocols to reset for the new day. At 12:01 a.m., the script Marcus had written was set to execute, funneling $5 million from the company's operating accounts into a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. I could imagine Marcus leaning back, swirling his champagne, that arrogant smirk plastered across his face. "To the easiest $5 million we ever made," he probably said. And Elena, I imagine she laughed. That light, airy laugh I used to love. And to Arthur, she might have added, raising her glass to the empty room, for being the perfect distraction. He's probably sitting in that big empty house right now, crying into his pillow, wondering what he did wrong. They were drunk on greed and high on adrenaline, completely unaware that the house they were sitting in was surrounded. They didn't see the dark figures moving silently through the tree line in white camouflage gear. They didn't see the snipers positioning themselves on the ridge. They thought they were the hunters, closing in for the kill. They had no idea they were the prey, and the trap was about to snap shut. The second hand on the analog clock swept past the 12 with a mechanical click. Midnight. Christmas Day had officially begun. At that exact moment, two things happened simultaneously. In Aspen, Marcus's automated script executed, attempting to move $5 million of stolen money. But in New York, I pressed the enter key on my laptop. I wasn't moving money. I was moving information. And in the 21st century, information is a far deadlier weapon. I had spent the last 6 hours crafting the perfect press release. I use a high-end PR distribution service that guaranteed immediate placement on the assignment desks of every major news network in the country: CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. I didn't want this buried in the back pages of a business section next week. I wanted it on the ticker at the bottom of the screen while people were opening their presents. The headline was brutal, direct, and impossible to ignore. Vance Architecture CEO Arthur Vance uncovers massive internal embezzlement ring. Names wife and vice president as co-conspirators in $5 million pension fraud scheme. I didn't stop at a headline. I attached a link to a public cloud drive containing the Christmas gift, redacted versions of the emails, the forged signatures, and the offshore account details. I stripped away their privacy just as they had stripped away my dignity. I wanted the world to know exactly who Elena Vance and Marcus Reynolds were. They weren't just alleged criminals. They were betrayers of the public trust. I sat back in the chair, watching the muted bank of televisions mounted on the wall of the FBI waiting room. For the first few minutes, nothing changed. Just reruns of holiday specials and late-night pundits arguing. But then, the phone at the desk of the agent on duty rang. Then another. Then the breaking news graphic flashed red on the CNN screen. Breaking news. Major fraud scandal at top New York firm. A grim smile touched my lips. I had just detonated a nuclear bomb on my own reputation to ensure they couldn't survive the blast. They thought they were stealing my company in the dark. I just turned on the stadium lights and invited the whole world to watch them fall. 7 minutes. That was exactly how long it took for the shockwave to travel from the news tickers in New York to the quiet mountains of Colorado. I was staring at my phone, watching the notifications flood in from confused board members and shocked friends. But I ignored them all. I was waiting for one specific call. And at 12:07 a.m., the screen lit up with the only name that mattered, Leo. I slid the green icon to answer and pressed the phone to my ear. Before I could even say a word, a wall of noise hit me. It wasn't just my son's voice. It was a background chaos. I could hear dogs barking, people shouting, and a distinct, terrifying warble of emergency sirens screaming in the distance. Dad, Dad, pick up. Leo was screaming, his voice cracking with panic. He sounded younger than his 19 years, like a terrified little boy lost in a crowd. Dad, are you seeing this? My phone is blowing up. Everyone is texting me. Leo, take a breath. I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with his hysteria. Are you safe? Is Sophie with you? Yes. We're in the upstairs hallway. But, Dad, what is going on? He was hyperventilating now. I just got a notification from the CBC News app. Your name is the headline, Dad. It says fraud. And Mom, oh my God, Dad. Mom's picture is right next to yours. They're calling her a fugitive. What the hell did you do? I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Picture my son huddled in the dark, clutching his phone, his world collapsing in real time. I didn't do anything, Leo. I told the truth. That's all. The truth? He yelled back, tears choking his words. Dad, look out the window. There are blue and red lights flashing all over the driveway. It looks like a SWAT team is down there. They have megaphones. They're yelling for Mom to come out with her hands up. My heart hammered against my ribs. The FBI team had moved in. The timing was impeccable. Leo, listen to me very carefully. I commanded, using my sternest father voice to cut through his panic. Do not go downstairs. Stay in your room with your sister. Lock the door. The police are there for Mom and Marcus. They are not there for you. You are safe. Do you understand me? Dad? His voice dropped to a whisper, trembling with a mix of fear and betrayal. Is it true? Did she steal from the company? I'm sorry you had to find out this way, son, I said softly. But yes, I'm cleaning our house, Leo. I'm finally taking out the trash. I stayed on the line, my phone pressed so hard against my ear that it hurt. I was thousands of miles away in a climate-controlled federal building, but through that tiny speaker, I was transported right into the middle of the nightmare I had unleashed. The background noise on Leo's end shifted from confused murmurs to absolute bedlam. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of the heavy oak front door, a door I had personally selected for its security and durability, being rammed off its hinges echoed like gunshots. Federal agents. Nobody move. Hands where we can see them. The authority in those voices was unmistakable. Even over a cell phone connection, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I heard the scuffle of heavy boots on the hardwood floors, the clatter of furniture being overturned, and then the screaming started. It was Elena. It wasn't the scream of a victim. It was the shriek of an entitled woman who had never been told no in her entire life. Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? You're hurting my wrist. Arthur, is this you? Is this your sick joke? She was still trying to blame me. Even as the FBI put her in irons for federal fraud, her first instinct was to paint me as the villain. Then I heard Marcus. He didn't scream. He sounded desperate, his voice pitching up an octave. Whoa, whoa. Officers, let's be reasonable here. There's been a misunderstanding with the paperwork. I can explain. I can fix this. How much? Is there a fine? I can write a check right now. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Do it now. I know people. Marcus yelled, the arrogance finally cracking into panic. I know the governor. You can't do this. The metallic click-click of handcuffs snapped shut, cutting off his threats. Leo, I called out into the phone, my heart aching for my children who had to witness this. Leo, are you there? Dad. Leo was sobbing now, and I could hear Sophie cry in the background. They have Mom. They're taking them out. They're taking them outside in the snow. It's okay. I soothed, my own voice thick with emotion. Agent Miller has a special team just for you and Sophie. They're going to come upstairs in a minute. They are nice people. They will take you to a hotel, and I will be on the first flight out in the morning to get you. I promise. I heard a softer voice on the other end, a female agent. Leo? Sophie? My name is Agent Sarah. Your dad sent us. You're safe now. Come with me. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, staring at the blank screen. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy, but for the first time in years, it felt clean. The tumor had been cut out. The surgery was messy, and the recovery would be painful, but the patient, my family, was going to survive. I took the first flight out of JFK the next morning. The private jet I usually charter for family vacations was grounded as part of the asset freeze I had initiated, so I flew commercial economy. Sitting in that cramped middle seat, surrounded by strangers, I felt a strange sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't the CEO Arthur Vance. I was just a father going to get his children. When I walked into the Aspen police station, the air smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner, a stark contrast to the pine-scented luxury of the cabin just a few miles away. Leo and Sophie were sitting on a metal bench in the waiting area, wrapped in gray blankets provided by the Red Cross. When they saw me, they didn't say a word. They just ran. We collided in a three-way hug that knocked the wind out of me. I held them tight, feeling their tears soak through my coat. "I've got you," I whispered. "I've got you." After settling them in a private room with Agent Sarah, Agent Miller approached me. "She's being transferred to the federal holding facility in Denver for arraignment," he said quietly. "Do you want to see her?" "You don't have to." "I do," I said. "I need her to see me." I walked down the hallway to the processing area, and there she was, Elena, the woman who spent $2,000 a month on skincare, who wouldn't be caught dead without her diamond earrings, was now wearing a bright orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. Her hair was matted, her makeup smeared down her cheeks, and her wrists were shackled to a waist chain. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with desperate manic hope. She lunged forward, the chains rattling sharply. "Arthur." "Oh, thank God." "Arthur, tell them. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. I was tricked. It was all Marcus. He made me do it." I stopped 5 feet away from her. I didn't look angry. I didn't look sad. I just looked at her like she was a stranger. "Arthur, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I love you. We're a family. You can't let the mother of your children go to prison. I'm sorry I called you difficult. I didn't mean it." I let the silence hang in the air for a moment, savoring the shift in power. "You were right, Elena," I said, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. "I am a difficult man." She froze, confusion clouding her teary eyes. I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a cold, hard whisper. "I am extremely difficult to fool, and I am impossible to break." I turned my back on her. As I walked away, her screams of Arthur echoed down the hallway, fading into background noise as a heavy steel door slammed shut behind me with final, definitive thud. It has been exactly 365 days since the flashing lights of the FBI raid illuminated the snow in Aspen. A lot can change in a year. I sold the penthouse on Fifth Avenue. It was too big, too cold, and held too many echoes of lies. I sold the Aspen cabin, too. I couldn't walk in there without seeing the ghost of betrayal. With the proceeds, and after settling the chaos at the firm, I started over. I opened a small boutique design studio in Brooklyn. We don't build skyscrapers for faceless corporations anymore. We build community centers, libraries, and affordable housing. I don't make millions, but for the first time in decades, I sleep soundly at night. Tonight, the scene is very different from that wretched dinner last year. We are in a modest brownstone, and the kitchen is small, but it smells of cinnamon, roasted turkey, and genuine happiness. There are no hired chefs or staff. Leo is mashing potatoes badly, I might add, leaving way too many lumps, and Sophie is in charge of the playlist, filling the house with classic Motown holiday hits. We sat down at a wooden table that I built with my own hands. There was no tension, no walking on eggshells. We laughed as Leo recounted a story about his college dorm life, and Sophie actually put her phone away without being asked. They are healing. It hasn't been easy. Visiting their mother in a federal penitentiary is a heavy burden for any child, but we face it together. We talk about it. We don't hide secrets anymore. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I looked around the table at the 2 people I love most in this world. I realized that Elena was right about one thing. I was difficult. I was difficult to manipulate, difficult to break, and difficult to defeat. And because of that, I saved my family. I raised my glass of apple cider. I gave up the scotch, too, and tapped it with a spoon. Leo and Sophie quieted down, smiling at me. To new traditions, I said, my voice thick with gratitude. And to learning that sometimes the best Christmas gift you can ever receive isn't what you find under the tree. It's who you remove from your life. Leo and Sophie clinked their glasses against mine. Merry Christmas, Dad. They said in unison, Merry Christmas. I replied, to a new life. And that, my friends, is how I reclaim my life from the edge of ruin. It's a reminder to all of us. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never underestimate a person who is fighting for their dignity. If this story inspired you to stand up for yourself, or if you just love a good serving of justice, please smash that like button and subscribe to Inspiration Seeker. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to cut toxic people out of your life to find happiness? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay sharp, and never let anyone tell you that you are too difficult.